Hey everyone, welcome back here to the Marvelous McGlestons. Hope you're having a happy new year. If you haven't had a chance to see the Christmas cards, I'm going to use the same process techniques in those Christmas cards, but with a large picture. So hope you enjoy. I'm going to jump right into it.
The first step when beginning a painting of this magnitude is being able to realize you just want to put paint on the page. Now, looking back at this, I should have broken down what the first step is into many different steps, but the first thing I wanted to do is be able to look at the reference photo and be able to improve or change or stylize it based on what was in my mind. One of the things I wanted to do was add more color. I wanted to pretend that this scene is happening at sunrise or sunset, not in the middle of the night. So the reference photo really just had dark blue and a little bit of light blue, and I wanted to add in yellow, and I wanted to add in a sunset, and I wanted to add in more color as if it is the setting sun. The other thing I wanted to stylize is I wanted to change my star to be with larger stencils to be able to have it more magnificent in the sky rather than having it look more of a realistic star. I wanted it to be stylized. Now, when preparing this, I wanted to go through and draw it out with a poster board that I could sketch and cut and remove and manipulate during the process.
Hey, at this stage of the painting, basically what I'm doing is working on different layers one at a time. The Christmas card demonstration literally was either one layer or two layers, depending on if you were doing the stencil or the opposite stencil. But because there's so many different pieces, like a puzzle piece, right now it's literally just the background. And then from there, I'm going to work my way forward by removing sections of the land and getting the bulk of the picture colored in paint. Because honestly, when you're painting, the one thing you need to just remember is all you're doing is putting paint onto a canvas. It just depends on how you do it. Gets you a different style and technique. But continue on. We're going to keep working forward on it.
After the sky is complete, it's time to be able to move forward into the different land pieces. One thing to keep in mind if you're doing this type of picture is I did not cut out all the different pieces beforehand like a real puzzle. I cut them out as I went. That way you can keep track and it's easier to manipulate if you have a big piece and then just work little by little as you go through. For an example, the buildings. The buildings, I didn't want to have all the little pieces that I can get overspray on from the land. I only wanted to work on that particular section of the buildings. Always start from yellow or from light and then work your way back. The other thing is it's important to recognize what direction you're splattering the paint. In this particular one, I wanted it to look like a stucco or a building made out of sand, where if you look at the sky, I wanted the direction of the splatter to always go out from the center of the star. That way, it keeps the observer's eyes moving based on the direction of where the paint landed. As I move on to the next, you can see rather than taping down each of the different pieces, I actually just have a heavy magnet that I would put over the stencils. So that way I didn't have to worry about the tape accidentally removing or hurting the paint. When you see the time lapse, you'll notice that there was times between each section that I had to bring out the hairdryer to dry each section. So it might look like I'm just skipping from one place to the next, but truly I'm letting it dry before moving on. Because if you have wet paint and you put the stencil over the wet paint, it's going to smear and you're going to lose the style of the splattering paint. This last little part in this section is right around where the manger is. So I wanted to make sure this was light. I didn't want it very dark because that's the centerpiece. Even though the manger is small and kind of not visible, but I wanted to keep everything around it very, very light, since that's where the baby Jesus will be seen.
Hey, I'm almost done with the first layer of paint. We're almost down to the last two foregrounds that are going to be the closest to you, the observer. So this is definitely going to be the darkest, almost black. And this is going to still be a darker purple, a little bit darker than this section over here. The one part that I think is going to be a little tricky, I haven't figured out, are these palm trees that I have in here. They've been covered, but coming back over them, they're going to be super close, so they're also going to be super dark. So I haven't quite figured that out, but hey, that's part of the process.
And look at that. Step one is almost complete of simply putting paint on your page. During this last section, there were a couple of things that I learned. One is a mistake is almost going to happen when you're painting, and you don't want the mistake to ruin your process. Just realize that it is a way to add something more unique. It almost happens right here. I was rushing. Normally with the toothbrush, I'll knock off extra paint before doing the splattering. I didn't do it. I was rushing, and some larger splots fell on, as you can see. Now, I could have gotten frustrated and realized that it's not going to have the uniformity that I was hoping, but guess what? It's okay. Don't sweat the mistakes when they happen. I just came back and removed as much as I could. Knowing that this was going to be a dark section, I decided to just make it darker than normal. And then later, I decided to also add some foliage, some dark grass over that area to kind of hide that mistake. One of the other things I realized is I wanted the last section to be the darkest, almost black. And I left the stencil holding that place completely. I should have removed the stencil completely, did this section with the medium dark look, and then covered it and come back over with the super dark area, and it would have been easier and it would have matched better with the opposite corner. In the opposite corner, I actually did that. I covered the entire area and then came back afterwards just to darken it down a little bit. Where if you're trying to bring white to extreme dark, it's difficult in comparison to trying to just take a dark section and making it even a little darker. Now, the palm trees in the tent were a little bit of a struggle. I was trying to figure out how to do that since I didn't cut them out, and I figured just doing it freehand would be fine. I actually just took a scrap piece of paper and I just held it on the edges, and I put in some extra dark areas where the tent would be, and I cut out a little stencil of where the palm trees would be. Because it's so dark, there doesn't need to be a lot of detail, which is okay. I just wanted it there so it helped with the composition of the picture, but I didn't want it to be the focal point. I didn't want people to focus on the palm tree. I just wanted it there off to the side to help with the composition. Because in the end, I truly want the focal point to be the manger, kind of in the middle of the page. And I always wanted to keep that in the forefront of my mind as the main focus.
Okay, at this point of the picture, what I'm going to do is remove all of the stencils that are on here. But I'm afraid that there's going to be sections that don't mesh up very well. I already know of one right in here. If you can see, there is this distinct little line right in here where I'm gonna have to come back and fix. Right in here, I think it looks pretty good, and right in here, it did a pretty good job coming over, and even with these buildings. But in some sections, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to come back in here and fix. I kind of like this little highlights though, because that's the light coming from the star. Here, let's keep going. And one more piece. Okay, step one is done. Step one is basically putting paint on the paper. Now I'm gonna come back in here and hit with highlights and be able to fix the transitions between each area to be able to, and also put in more of the details. Like I still need the little manger in here, and put in some trees and put in some grass to basically connect one section to the next. But I'm happy, it's looking great.
Now that the stencil's been removed and they're no longer on the page, I didn't like the brightness of the white of the star. Because I wanted to add more color to this picture and not just have white, I wanted to add some yellow into the star to give it some variety rather than just having the bleakness of the white. This isn't snow. This should be a joyful and a wonderful location, or I guess a wonderful event that's taking place in the world. So I'm adding some light yellow to the star, and then later I'm gonna add some brilliant white because into the middle and with some rays, because I wanted the star to look realistic but not realistic, if that makes sense. If you're looking at a star and it's twinkling, it's not gonna look like this geometric shape that's shaped here. It does have other light sources shooting out from it. So I just actually put 2 pieces of paper down, and then I will splatter little rays between those 2 pieces of papers to be able to break up the monotony of just the white. Later on, I even go deeper, and I'll use my palette knife to add in some more lines. The other thing is, after everything is dry, I wanted to add some slight details to the other buildings. On this particular building, there is a highlight because the light source is the star and the manger. I purposely took the stencil and I covered the white when I was doing the splattering because I wanted a light source shining against the buildings. As well as you notice that the darker sections off to the right, I wanted to feel more of a shadow, and it gets lighter as you're going to the light source. Just a slight variation in the color that it makes it look more cohesive. Same with the darks of the tent, just wanted to add some little detail, and I'll later come in and I'll even put in some foliage, some different grass, and finish off the top of the palm trees.
Hey, right about now, I would say it is about 90% finished. What I'm going in is basically connecting these different sections with something to be able to make the piece look more coherent overall. So for an example, like right here, these trees that are definitely in the foreground, they're close up, so they're darker. It's breaking from this lower basically black section through this brown section, even up into the highlights of the sunrise or sunset. It's actually a sunset because this is the night Christ is born. So sunset. And then also along in here, same thing. I wanted to connect the brown of the buildings with the black by putting in a silhouette of a palm tree and even little ones here to be able to give it depth. I think the last thing I'm gonna do is the little manger right here, where the light's coming down. after I think I finished everything else out. So that's what I'm going to focus on at the very, very end. But I hope you've enjoyed it so far.
Now for the most important part, the manger, the birth of Christ. I didn't want it to be incredibly detailed, but I did want it to be recognizable. I wanted the viewers to be able to look at the picture and immediately know the story and the event that took place. So rather than putting tons of detail into it, I wanted to make a simple little manger and some fence that they might have kept their animals in, and then 3 silhouettes of the baby Jesus and Mary and Joseph. Again, to be able to allow the viewer to immediately know what this scene represents, but not to have it be incredibly overwhelming to the picture itself. Because truly, the centerpiece not only is the birth of Christ, but it's the star that is so magnificent shining in the sky.
Hey everyone, I hope you had a Merry Christmas with your family and a Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed this painting demonstration of the first Christmas, or basically of the Nativity. And I hope you enjoyed understanding how you can use the strategies from the 14 Christmas cards of using stencils to be able to do big pictures like this. It just takes a little bit more time and a little bit more patience, but even you can do something this magnificent. If you think it's magnificent. Well, if you think it's magnificent, comment down below. Let me know. Give me some encouragement to let me know if people out there are enjoying this. I hope you are. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope you'll share the love with others and let them know during this wonderful season. Have a Merry Christmas from the Marvelous McGlestons.